talk about Final Fantasy. It is probably the longest-running RPG video game series ever, spanning from the old NES to the present generation systems. With the most sequels of any game that I'm aware of. The games are numbered, but the numbers seem to refer more to volume than sequel. Mostly because the story is unrelated to the previous game. But I'm not here to give a history lesson, sort of, or to talk about all the spin-offs. I'm here to find out where, in my opinion, the franchise went wrong. The Nintendo Entertainment System had 3 titles that have since been remade on several platforms. The original Final Fantasy was released in Japan in 1987 and in North America in 1990. It was a great game for its time, and while bringing some new stuff to the table, it had a lot of old-school fantasy elements in it. Elves, dwarves, dragons, so you get the picture. The only thing that it lacked is the amount of personal interaction you had with the NPCs in the game itself. Sure, you get to name the characters and pick their jobs, but the characters themselves don't have any backstory, and are never referred to by name. Which brings us to Final Fantasy II, which was released in 1988 in Japan, and has been bundled with Final Fantasy in several re-releases. I myself didn't play it till the PSX release of Final Fantasy Origins. The one major thing I liked about this game was the leveling system. Instead of gaining XP when you win a fight, and nothing when you run, your character's stats increase according to how you use them in battle. It also increased the player interaction dramatically and gave every player character a backstory, which in turn made you feel like you were playing as someone you can relate to in a fantasy setting, rather than 4 people who are just there to save the world. Notable first, Fantasy II was the first to introduce chocobos, and gave us our first incarnation of the character Cid. Final Fantasy III was released in Japan in 1990, however, it was not released elsewhere until a Nintendo DS remake in 2006. This game brings us something old, experience point system, and something new, job system, yay, which was a lot like Final Fantasy I, except that you can change your class during the game. I first played Final Fantasy III on an NES emulator a few years before the DS remake. And in doing so, I have experienced a difference in story from the nameless Onion Kid, who is a lot like their predecessors, the Warriors of Light, to the 4 remade characters who are given complete backstories and individual names. Notable first, of course, is the job system, and in turn was the first game to feature steal, jump, and summon commands. Also, Moogles made their first appearance here before dominating every aspect of Squaresoft, which is now, of course, Square Enix. Like its predecessor, the NES, the SNES had 3 titles as well: Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The first of which was Final Fantasy IV, released in 1991 in North America as Final Fantasy II. Confused? Unlike its Final Fantasy predecessors, you do not pick the class of the character that you meet. Rather, you develop the class of the individual characters that you're playing. This is a move that kills the customization, but in no way kills the game, because this particular volume is all about getting our story on. Getting to know all 12 playable characters was awesome, and being able to name them after people that they remind me of was all the sweeter. Also, another thing that may have turned most people away is the linear characters come, characters go storyline. Despite that fact, Final Fantasy IV comes in an easy second of the best in the franchise. Notable first, active time battle system. On to Final Fantasy V, which was released in 1992 in Japan, but most Americans had their first chance to play it on Final Fantasy anthologies for the PSX. This particular sequel, volume, brings back the old job system in an improved way, allowing you to mix class skills, rather than just play the class to the end. The story mainly follows 4 playable characters, then a 5th one close to the end. Something about a meteorite, another world, Boko the Chocobo. You know, I'm having a hard time remembering anything about this game. That's probably because the story bored me, and at the time I just wanted to finish it to put another notch on the I beat that Final Fantasy belt. Now don't get me wrong, it is not a bad game. It's just that the story's so generic nothing quite pops to memory. Notable firsts. It spawned a sequel in the form of a short anime series titled Final Fantasy Legend of the Crystals. This game also brought us Blue Mage. Yep. Blue Mage. Now on to Final Fantasy VI, which was released worldwide in 1984 but was titled Final Fantasy III in North America. Still confused? I love this f***ing game. The first half of the story follows a linear some characters come, some characters go story path mixed with a choose your party option. Then, BAM! The second half of the game takes place 1 year after the end of the world, and is mostly free adventuring to find lost characters, get the best weapons/items, and explore the backstories of any one of the 14 playable characters. Final Fantasy VI adopted Final Fantasy IV's I'm here, I'm this, get used to it, meaning every individual character has a skill that no one else can do, except for Gogo. But despite that fact, character development was huge because of two things, Magicite and Relics. Magicite gives you the ability to summon espers, learn magic, and develop a character's stats while leveling. Relics enhance your character's stats, change class abilities, or give you a completely new ability. On top of all this, the game is mostly you picking your own party, giving you a feeling of freedom that has been, for the most part, lost in sequels since. So let's go down the checklist of what makes this
the best Final Fantasy game ever!
This game has an immersive storyline with characters that all have deep individual stories of their own that make you want to know more about them and gives you the chance to do just that. An expansive and a little simplified character customization system. Despite the first half of the game being a linear story path, the second half gives you the freedom to pick your own party and the means to travel the world quickly and easily, increasing the feel of freedom for the player. This particular Final Fantasy is a shining example of how story and gameplay are done right. In doing so, you feel for the entire cast and want them to succeed. But most of all, you want to continue playing to find out what happens next. Notable firsts, Party Swap, and Desperation Attacks. Now that we've reached the peak, we'll see where the franchise went wrong on the next episode, starting from Final Fantasy VII all the way to what passes for Final Fantasy now.
Mama loves mambo. Mama loves mambo. Mama loves mambo. Mama loves mambo. Having their fling again, younger than spring again, feeling that zing again. Wow. Mama loves mambo.
and all their blue magic and all their blue magicy goodness. Blue magicy. And all their blue magicy goodness. Blue magicy. Yeah. And all their blue magicy goodness.